I think 25 basis points is pretty much baked in the cake, pretty consensus. So the language is really going to be very important in what we think is going to happen in the future beyond this week's meeting. And we think the Fed is probably going to try their best to maintain a certain degree of so-called optionality for themselves so that they can potentially have more policy flexibility in September. They will probably likely remark on the recent slowdown in jobs numbers as well. Obviously, the inflation data, headline CPI in the U.S. is now running at 3%, still above their target, of course. And of course, core CPI is actually slightly higher than that. So we think that the direction of travel for inflation, they will probably remark that is encouraging, but perhaps the speed is not yet to their liking, so they want to preserve that policy optionality.
So some of the data points have edged lower. What about the economy? Are we getting set for a recession in the United States? And if that happens, when do you expect the policy pivot to take place?
So we think that the U.S. economy today, on several fronts, is actually still quite resilient. For example, the labor market is still very strong. Household savings today still being artificially lifted by the COVID stimulus checks that were written in 2020. And so household balance sheets are still in decent shape, but they are starting to deteriorate. Based on the current trajectory, that excess savings from COVID stimulus will probably run out to the third quarter, fourth quarter of this year. So we think that the U.S., however, we think is probably likely headed to a recession towards the end of this year, start of 2024. We think the primary driving force of that is going to be tightening credit conditions, as bank balance sheets, particularly among U.S. regionals, remain somewhat flawed and still have to be repaired in order to get bank lending going again. So we think that the drying up of credit conditions will be what will bring the U.S. to a recession at the end of this year, start of next year.